Abba Yahuwah. Wow, my Father, I just want to thank you. I thank you for this day. I thank you for what you are doing. I thank you for the very hour that we are in. I thank you for this day, that this day is the 5th of the 4th month according to the Hebrew calendar, according to your calendar, according to the calendar, according to the alignment of seeing the new moon in how you want us to keep a calendar. And today is the 5th day of the 4th month. And this 5, a day of grace. And on this day, you are opening the door for us to be able to come into this Exodus, this book of Shemot, the book of names, but at the same time, Exodus, a time of when your people was to exit out of bondage, out of slavery. And Abba Yahuwah, this is the hour now that your people need to now come alive. They need to have ears to hear, they need to have eyes to see, and they need to come out from those areas in their lives where they will still find themselves captive, where they will still find themselves in bondage, where they are still in a place of slavery, be it to their mental state of mind, be it in their flesh man, where they're not wanting to conform to your ways, be it in their religious systems, that maybe they're still bound by a religious system. And now is the time. We have established a foundation in Genesis to understand that we are not to be able to conform to a religious system, to a religious way, because from the beginning, from the time when you called Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, everything was about being able to have intimacy. Everything was about them being in covenant with you in a garden, for them to be able to have intimacy, because a covenant is a covenant between a husband and a wife. A covenant is a partnership. A covenant is something that we go into partnership with. And therefore, you wanted a covenant people from the beginning. And they were the ones who broke covenant. They were the ones who bowed to a serpent and allowed the serpent's seed to come within them. But Abba, you are still now in this hour calling your people out, to come out of Babylon, to come out of everything that is wanting to bring the serpent's seed in our lives that still keeps us captive and bound in so many different areas of our lives, where the enemy comes and torments us in our mind, where the enemy comes and allows us to be able to be conformed to the world and the ways of the world, and that we are conformed to the cares and the things of this world more than we are concerned for him and his kingdom. And all these things have kept us captive. And there are many that are still captive by religious doctrines, by religious systems. And this is why we've been laying a foundation. In Genesis, everything in Genesis was about laying a foundation. And the foundation was to be able to let us understand that we are a people that the Father wants to cut covenant with. He called Noah, 8 people that entered into an ark. And from there, when they came out of the ark, there was a covenant made with a rainbow. And then you made covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, with Yaakov. And this covenant is going to continue with the names that are going to come into, as we start in Exodus chapter 1. It's listing the names of those that formulated the house of Israel, that is going to be able to be a people, a family. It's just a family, but how the family is going to grow and it's going to become a nation. So where it was just a family, this family now needs to grow and it's going to become a nation. And therefore, the nation eventually is going to expand and it's going to bring in even those from other nations, because Yeshua has come to make a way for that. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you for the excitement that I have in my spirit for this wonderful book of Exodus, as I love the book of Exodus, because we see your hand and how you come and you deliver your people. You have always had a plan to bring deliverance to your people, and your people will rebel, but yet your heart is always to teach them, to guide them, to lead them, to show them, to come back to you, to come back to your heart, to come back to your ways. And we are the ones that are rebellious. We are rebellious people. We do not want to conform. We do not want your ways. We do not want your precepts or your ordinances or your statutes or your laws. We want it our way, and we want the easy way. But I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, because throughout this book, you are going to give us much foundation, because this is our foundational covenant that we are going to start working with. And for you to be able to lead us and guide us and teach us, because from this book now, there will be foundations. It starts with the people coming out, and it ends with a tabernacle being erected. So we are to become that tabernacle for you to understand that that is what you wanted from the beginning. Priests that would serve you and become a tabernacle that will carry your presence. That is the beginning. We're going to be delivered so that at the end of this book of Exodus, we can become this tabernacle and we can become a priesthood that is to be able to carry your presence. And this is everything that we're going to need to understand from beginning to end. There is a beginning, there is a middle, there is an end, there is a process that we need to work through in order to get there. And so I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, that you are the one that is going to lead and guide and teach us to be able to walk this pattern out, and that we want to be willing and obedient vessels that are going to learn from our forefathers who have already gone ahead of us. I praise and I thank you for this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Praise Abba Yahuwah. So this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what we are preparing ourselves for as we're going to enter into this book and as we're going to cover Exodus. So let us start by understanding the word Exodus. Exodus in the Greek is the word that means departure. So Exodus is the Greek word that means departure, and it is derived from the word ek, and that's the meaning. What ek means is out of, and that's 1537, which means out of. So they've come out of, they're going to come out of. And then hodos, which is 3598, which is the meaning road. So they're going to come out and they're going to be on a road. They're going to be on a wilderness road. They're going to be on a road in order for them to be able to come into a place where the Father wants to talk to them, where the Father wants to bring them into a promised land. From the beginning, they were supposed to have left a journey that was going to take them 11 days. It took them 40 years. And why did it take them 40 years? Because that is what we're going to look into. Because we're going to, once we go into cover now, we are now going to cover this Exodus and then Leviticus and then Numbers and then Deuteronomy. And we are going to understand the wilderness journey, to understand all the foundations of what we need to learn, because these has been given everything here from Genesis that we've already covered to now coming into Exodus. It is all about giving us a foundation. It's all about teaching us so that we do not make the same mistakes. Everything has been put there as foundations for us. You see, this is our foundational covenant. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy is our foundational covenant to understand the foundations that Father's already put in place for us to learn how He wants to be served, not how we're going to serve Him out of ourselves. So He was revealing Himself to Abraham. He was revealing Himself to Isaac. He was revealing Himself to Yaakov. He was revealing Himself to Joseph. He was revealing Himself now to the children of Israel to show them how He wants them to serve Him. And this is what He's busy doing. And so we are going to have a look at this. The Hebrew word for Exodus is the word Shemot, and that word Shemot is the word, it means these are the names of. So when you do the Torah studies, when you study, like there's sections that you study, each section starts with a name. So when we get to Exodus, it starts with the very first verse of that chapter that is going to be with where we're starting a new reading, and this is now the one that says these are the names, and that is why it's called Shemot, because these are the names of those that came out of Israel into the land of Egypt. That was a family, and now what does this family is going to eventually now grow into the nation of a people that is to become Father's chosen people of Israel. They were to become a nation. And so the book of Exodus describes the story of deliverance. The deliverance of the Israelite people coming out of Mitzrayim, and the journey that they are going to journey to the first place that they're going to eventually come to, which is going to be Mount Sinai. So you see, they're going to come out of Egypt at a very strategic time that we're going to understand. This is now when we're going to go deeper into the understanding of Father's calendar, of Father's ways, of foundations, of things that we have been taught that is only for the Jews, that we are going to understand that it's not only for the Jews, but it was given from the Father, from the beginning, for a chosen people. So if we are those that are grafted into this covenant, then whatever pertains to the covenant that was made with Israel, therefore it's a covenant for us as well, so that we can understand that we too are those children that need to be in covenant with Him. So it's going to be a story of a people coming out of Mitzrayim and the journey to Mount Sinai, where He is going to now give them His covenant and say, this is my covenant that I want you to be able to keep with me. And the events that are actually going to occur during their journey there. So what all is going to happen while they're on their journey to Mount Sinai, and then from there, what the Father is going to do. And so the journey was up to Mount Sinai, and then the rest of the chapters, for the last 15 chapters, is how the Father is going to speak to them about a tabernacle. So isn't it amazing? We are to come out of bondage. We are to be delivered by the King, so that we can then become a priesthood, to be able to be those that will be a tabernacle that He may dwell. And this is what we're going to understand throughout this book. And it is a story of a people who came from a promised land. So they were a people that was already in a promised land. That promised land was promised to Abraham, was then given to Isaac, was then given to Yaakov, and then from there, the famine hit. And so in Genesis 46, verses 26 to 27, we see that this was a people, 70 people, that was going to come out they're going to come out of the promised land, and they were going to come into Egypt. So if we have a look at Genesis chapter 46, verses 26, and it says, and all the beings who went with Yaakov to Mitzrayim, who came from his body, besides Yaakov's sons' wives, were 66 beings in all, and the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Mitzrayim, were 2 beings. All the beings of the house of Yaakov who went to Mitzrayim were 70. And the sons of Joseph were born to him in Mitzrayim were 2 beings. All the beings of the house of Yaakov who went to Mitzrayim were 70. So here we see they were 70 beings. So if we have a look and we continue to read now, we start reading in Exodus chapter 1, and it says, and these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Mitzrayim with Yaakov, each one with his household, was Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all those who were descendants of Yaakov were 70 beings, as Joseph was already in Mitzrayim. And Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. And the children of Israel bore fruit and increased very much, multiplied and became very strong, and the land was filled with them. So we see that here now starts. First, they were in the promised land. But what happened? A famine came in the promised land. So you must understand, you will be in a comfortable place. You are in a place where you are actually quite comfortable. You are enjoying your promised land. And all of a sudden, a famine is going to come. Destruction is going to come. There's going to be something that is going to be able to come and basically bring a disturbance. And then they had to come out of their promised land, and they went into the land of Egypt. And in this land of Egypt, they became, now we're going to see what happens to them in the land of Egypt, that again brings them into a place where they're now going to have to exit, because understand, this was a place where they came to. Goshen was a place of safety. Goshen was a place that Father prepared for them, because he already knew that the famine was coming. He already knew that there was going to be famine in the land. He already knew what was going to come up against them. And because he knew that they were going to have famine, now understand, Father could have made sure that they would still have had manna given to them from heaven, as he does with them when they're in the wilderness. But Father never chose to be able to give them manna from heaven. Father did not choose that they were not to go through the famine. They went through the famine, and because of that, he already sent Joseph ahead to bring them into Mitzrayim. And so we will see the main theme of Exodus is the theme of redemption. Why? The deliverance of the children of Israel from bondage in Egypt, because what is going to happen? Let us continue to read our story. And the children of Israel bore fruit and increased very much, multiplied and became very strong. And the land was filled with them. We are in Shemot 1 verse 8 now. Then a new sovereign, a new Pharaoh, arose over Mitzrayim, who did not know Joseph. So understand, now there was a Pharaoh that did not know Joseph. He didn't know that Joseph was the one, that he was an Israelite, that he was the one that brought these Israelites into the land, but that he was the one that was second in charge of the land, that was put under the Pharaoh in order to be able to help the land of Egypt not to go into famine. And he provided for them for 7 years so that they would be able to acquire much wealth and become the most powerful nation in the whole world. At that time was this land of Mitzrayim, this Egypt, because everybody was subject to selling their possessions, selling everything in order for them to be able to just to get grain for them to be able to feed themselves. And so we see in verse 10, and so, and he said to his people, see the people, so then a new sovereign came and arose, and then verse 9 he says, and he said to his people, see, the people of the children of Israel are more and stronger than we. Come, let us act wisely towards them, lest they increase, and it shall be when fighting befalls us, that they shall join our enemies and fight against us, and shall go up out of the land. So there is a threat. You see, whenever children of the Father start to rise up, then there is a threat. You understand? Now they are threatened. They are threatened. There's a threat all of a sudden now. Because why? All of a sudden they're threatened now. Because now they're seeing this multitude of people. And who are these people? Do you understand? So they set slave masters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom, and Ramesses. So understand, now we see they are now put into slavery. So it says, but the more they afflict, so now they are put into slavery. So all of a sudden, there was this freedom that they had. They were enjoying this freedom. And they had lived there for how many years? We're going to look at how many years they have been part of the land of Mitzrayim. And they were there in freedom, and they were there enjoying the land. But understand, this is not where they belong. So you must understand, Father has a destiny of where you belong. And sometimes He's going to have to kick you out of your nest in order for you to finally come to the destiny of where you belong. So He will make the circumstances around you sometimes very difficult. So it's the same as like when there is a bird. Normally the birds, like I know that I've read about eagles, for example. When the baby eagles are sitting in the nest and they're very comfortable sitting in their nest and they're comfortable being there because now mommy is feeding them and daddy is feeding them and they're very happy in their little nest. Mommy starts to remove the feathers of the nest. And so one feather gets removed and another feather gets removed until eventually the twigs start to prick them. And now they are forced to have to want to jump out and start to fly. Because the time is coming that they need to learn to fly to the destination of where they belong, fly into their own destiny and start their own call and start their own walk, and they need to go into their own destiny. And so it is the fact that the children of Israel have been there now for more than 400 years, or it could have been about 400 years. And now, all of a sudden, or less than 400 years, because by the time Moses comes, they've been there for more than 430 years, I think it is. And so now, they've got very comfortable there. But this is not their destiny. This is not their land. This is not where they belong. This is not the promised land. So they're comfortable there. They're enjoying life there. They're very happy there. But this is not their destination. This is not their promised land. This is not the land that was promised them through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you see, sometimes Father is going to make it difficult for you to finally get to the place of where you're supposed to be. So He makes it difficult. And so for you to be able to finally get to what you're supposed to do, it's going to become uncomfortable. It's not always easy in the beginning, and it takes everything out of you. And it's not, you imagine those little eagles, now all of a sudden they have to go find their own food. They have to go out and get their own food. They cannot stay in that nest forever. Mommy is going to kick them out. And the nest is no longer comfortable, you understand. It's going to get uncomfortable for them. And so we must understand that everything about Exodus is about a deliverance of the children of Israel from bondage. They are now in bondage in Egypt. It is a redemption plan. And the story has a deliverer. And that deliverer is Moshe, who will be seen as a type of Messiah. So you see, that is what I love about the Exodus story, because the Exodus story is again going to be everything about seeing our Messiah in the Exodus story. Messiah is Moshe is going to be a type of Messiah. He's going to be a type of Messiah, one who lived in a palace, one who was taken in by the very daughter of the Pharaoh, raised up in a palace. But then he's going to have to be stripped of all of that to come poor amongst his people, to become a shepherd, to be able to come and bring the deliverance of his people. So our Messiah came from a heavenly realm where he has the riches of heaven. But he had to strip himself of all of that to be able to come and dwell amongst the people to be their deliverer. And so Moshe also had to go into a wilderness and had to be in a wilderness 40 years to learn to tend sheep, to learn to deal with his nature. Because you see, Moses has got a serious nature within him, a nature that needs to learn to be a bit submissive, you understand, because there was a lot of anger in Moses' nature. So the father is going to let him become a shepherd boy. Go become a shepherd boy so that you can learn to deal with this. And so Moses is going to be seen as a type of Messiah for the people. And as we are going to read through Exodus and consider Abba's ways, Yahuwah is leading us out of many things that have held us captive. We must now make a decision to follow him. He's the one wanting to deliver us, but then it is up to us to be obedient to follow him on the journey. So you see, this is the key of the gospel, you understand. The gospel was a free gift. It was a free gift. Deliverance was a free gift to the people of Israel. He is the one who told them. They did nothing. They were crying out for help. Father sent a deliverer. And the angel of death passed by their houses. And they're going to get delivered. That was the free gift. But now, they are going to be put on a journey. And in this journey, they are going to have to follow the Father's way. And if they don't, many are going to die. And then if they don't, they're going to stay in the wilderness. And they're not going to make their way back to the promised land. And so you see, this is the journey of our lives. This is where the journey begins. This is now where we are going to begin our journey, because our journey started with us having to get saved. And so we got saved. And now, what have we been doing on this journey of the salvation that we have received? So we've received salvation, but what journey did we go on? Because the Father takes us on a pattern, and the pattern has always been there from the beginning. And the pattern has been, I am going to deliver you. I was the deliverer. I brought you out of bondage. I brought you out of slavery, where you were enslaved to your enemy, where you were enslaved to the devil, where you didn't know me, where you didn't know my ways, where you walked according to your flesh and your flesh ways, and everything that your mind wanted to do, you did, and everything that your body wanted to do, you did, and everything that your life wanted to do, you did. You followed your way and you did your own thing. But now, I have come to deliver you, and I am saying to you, you were free to run your own life and do it your way. Now, I have delivered you. That was your free gift that I gave you. But now I want you to follow my pattern. Because you see, if you don't come back to my pattern, you're not going to eat from my tree of life. Because at the end of the day, if you don't obey his commands, you are not going to be one that is going to eat from the tree of life. Because that is what it's spoken of in, let's just quickly go there. So we must understand, he gives us the end from the beginning, and we must understand the pattern, because the pattern doesn't change. And this is what we must understand. And that's why the Father takes us on a journey, because the journey is to be able to reveal to us the Father's heart and the Father's plan, and for us to understand his precepts, his ordinances, his ways. His ways has not changed. He says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. I change not. So when he called Abraham, he showed him his way. He showed him how he wanted to be served. He showed him his pattern. He showed him how he wanted to be sacrificed. He had to sacrifice for his sins. He showed him the pattern. He gave him laws, rules, ordinances, precepts. He gave him his laws. He told him how he was to serve him. And if he didn't serve him, he would go, and it would become a difficult thing for him, because then he sowed to the flesh. And what would he get out of it? Like when he went and birthed Ishmael, what did he get out of Ishmael? Nothing but heartache and pain. So when we don't do it the Father's way, what are we going to get out of it? Heartache and pain. And so if we have a look at Revelation chapter 22, verses 14, it says, blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. So you see, the pattern has been there from the beginning. You are to come out of bondage. Deliverance is the free gift that our Messiah has given us. But now you are to follow a pattern. For deliverance was free. But now you are to be returning back to him and to his ways. And if you don't, then you will have hardships along the way. There's going to be many that are going to die along the way, until eventually they still did not want to obey. They still did not want to do it his way. And in the end, only 2 of the original, however many million they say, that could have been 2 million that came out of Mitzrayim with women and children and all. So at the end of the day, only 2 million. Out of 2 million, only 2 made it. So that is a 1%. It's not a lot. And so at the end of the day, he didn't bring the rest of them in because of their rebellious attitudes. And this is what the Father is wanting to teach us, that he has a pattern. And his pattern has been laid out for us in Scripture. And so that is why he's saying, you see, deliverance was the free gift that he gave us. He gave us deliverance as a free gift. And deliverance was the angel of death came and passed over the houses of the Israelites, as we're going to get further into Exodus chapter 12. And when we're finally going to look at this whole Exodus and how they're going to exit out of the land, it's going to be so exciting and so wonderful to be able to go into all of these things. And this was a free gift. The angel of Yahuwah passed by them, and the Pharaoh was going to let them go. And this is the whole story of what is going to happen. But then they are going to have to, they were a rebellious people. You must understand, for more than 400 years, there was no Father speaking into their life. They were living their lives. They were in the world. They learned the ways of the world. They did the things of the world. They were conformed to the world. They lived like the Egyptians. They served the Egyptian idolatry. They did all of this of Egypt. They lived like the Egyptians. They thought like the Egyptians, because by this time, where is a leader to lead them to come back to the Father's way? And so now the Father is wanting to reveal himself to them and say, okay, so now you've lived your way, it's time to live my way. Do you understand? And so this is what we're going to understand as we're going to embark on this journey over the next couple of books that we're going to read, which is really going to become our foundational covenant. And so he delivers us, but then it is up to us to be obedient, to follow him on the journey, so that we may come into his promised land. So do you see, the destination is still the promised land. The problem is that many of us think that we get saved and then we immediately go into the promised land. Oh no, my friends, you are not going into the promised land. You are not in the promised land. You are in your wilderness, because this is not your promised land. Your promised land is a land, and that is a land of Eretz Israel. That is the promised land where Yeshua is going to put his feet and where he's going to reign and rule for 1,000-year millennial reign. And you are either going to be part of that or you are not. He's either going to gather you out of the four corners of the earth when he puts his feet on the Mount of Olives, and he's going to come and reign and rule for 1,000 years, and that is going to be the 1,000-year millennial reign. I've got news for you. You are not being prepared because you're going to die and go to heaven. That is not what you're being prepared for. Right now, we are the remnant of the last generation that is being equipped, that's being prepared, that is being polished, that's being equipped so that you can go and reign and rule with him 1,000-year millennial reign. It's not for you to be able to think that you are just going to stand back and say, well, you know what, I don't need to worry about anything, because you know what, Jesus has done everything for me, and now I'm just going to fly out of here and I'm going to go to heaven. That is not what you are being equipped for. You are being equipped for you to be able to go and reign and rule with the King in a millennial reign, where he's going to reign from a city, Jerusalem, from Mount Zion, right from the beginning. This has been the plan. And so this is what we are being equipped for. And so he wants us to be able to come into this promised land. So you see, now you're going to go in this wilderness, and it all depends how you do in the wilderness, whether you're going to make it or whether you're not. And this is what people do not understand, because they've never been taught the pattern. They've never been taught his foundation. They've never been taught that there is a pattern that they are to follow. And that is why we are to understand the pattern. We are to understand that there was a pattern that was given to them, and therefore the pattern hasn't changed. And the pattern is there to be able to speak to us, for us to understand that there is a way that the Father has taken us. So you must understand, you don't receive salvation and then think that immediately you're going to enter into the Holy of Holies. No, because that's not the pattern that he shows you in Exodus. He shows you the pattern that he starts first in the Holy of Holies, and he works his way and he works his way and he works his way, and he tells you that this is the pattern of a house, and it's a pattern of a tabernacle. And so your tabernacle is supposed to be able to be built to bring glory and honor to him, and you need to understand his pattern. You need to understand his way. And this is what is so interesting, because you see, this is what has been lost to the people who sit in religion. When you sit in your church and you sit in religion, you just go through the motions, and you go to sermons, you go to church on a Sunday and again on a Sunday, and yet what are you being equipped for? What is the pattern that's being taught you? Where are you being sanctified? Where are you being purified? Where are you being set apart? If the Father says, be holy as I'm holy, be set apart as I'm set apart, then that is the pattern of what you're supposed to be doing. That is what is supposed to be happening in your life. You are supposed to be cleaned up. You are supposed to be being cleaned up, so that you can finally overcome the trials and the tests that are going to happen in the wilderness, so that you may finally be one that is going to be able to enter with him into this promised land, to reign and rule with him. Because let me tell you something, even if we have a look, we're busy looking, we're busy studying the book of Isaiah. And so as we're studying the book of Isaiah, we are starting to understand that if you do not keep his way, and you are living in his land, and you do not conform to his way, and you do not keep his pattern and the ways that he wants you to follow, he's going to kick you out of that land. You cannot dwell in that land and do it your way. You cannot continue to follow the Father your way. You need to understand that you are going to learn a pattern. And the pattern is, the salvation was the gate that you entered when you're going to enter into a tabernacle. That was the salvation. That was the free gift. But the minute you come to the very first bit of furniture inside that tabernacle, it's a brazen altar, which means you are going to have to lay your life down. You are not the king of your life. You are not in charge of your life. Your life does not belong to you. Your life belongs to him. And he wants to teach you his way so that you live your life his way. And so he wants to bring us into a promised land. He delivers us, and then we have to go through the process of the tabernacle to understand that this is the first step. It's the first step into the outer court. But then there is a way that he wants us to be able to worship him in the Holy of Holies. And this is part of the process so that we can become not just a people that are saved, but a people that can become kings and priests on the earth, a royal priesthood, because that is how Exodus ends. So Exodus starts with a deliverance, but it ends with a tabernacle being erected and priesthood coming forth. So we must understand that this is part and parcel of the Father's plan. And so I'm giving you a bit of an overview here, and I'm telling you that you are going to embark on an exciting journey. And why is it exciting? Because right now, this is what the King is doing in your life. You cannot continue to stay in those places of where you are captive and bound. If you're still bound by religion, then he's going to want you to come out of it. If you're still bound by your flesh ways and the things and the riches and the lusts of the flesh and this world, he's going to loose you from that. And he's going to want you to be able to come out of everything that is still keeping you captive to running your own life. So that you understand you were bought with a price and you are not your own. You are his, just like he's going to deliver them. But then they are his, and therefore he wants to teach them how he wants to be served. And so we get saved, and then he needs to clean us up so that we learn how he wants to be served. And you know what is so sad? Some people have been saved 40 years, but they've never learned what it truly means to be cleaned up and serve him. So they're 40 years saved, but they're still babies that are still sitting in the outer court and have never come and learned what it means to really lay their lives down. They still live their lives for themselves. They still do everything for themselves. They are still the king of their own throne. They are still the queen of their own castle, and they do their own thing. And nothing is really for the kingdom of the Father. And then there are others that give a little bit to the Father, but most of their lives is still for themselves. And this is where people live. And this is how people are. And this is why there's the shaking going to come, because you see, the only time that we really bow our knee and turn fully back to him is when you are in slavery, like they are in slavery right now. And now they're going to cry out to a deliverer. But then the deliverer comes and delivers them. But then what do? They want a deliverer, but they still want to live their own lives. And this is not going to work. And this is what we're going to understand throughout this book of Exodus. And as we're going to complete Exodus, we're going to come into the book of Leviticus, when he's going to lay down some foundational things. And then we're going to understand Numbers, when we're really going to understand rebellion from another degree. And then we're going to have Deuteronomy, when he's going to recap everything. So it's going to be an exciting journey. So see, Genesis was laying out our covenant for us. Genesis laid it out. Genesis gave us a foundation that we needed to understand our Father, to understand that he's El Shaddai, to understand that he's made covenant, to understand that he called a family. Now he's calling a nation, and then he's going to call tribes that are going to come together, and he's going to call people out of nations to form part of a house, a fullness of a house. And this is what he's busy doing. And this is what he's going to do. And he's busy doing it right now. This is part of his plan. His plan has not changed. We are the ones that have not understood his pattern. But he is the one that is working on this beautiful pattern that he has already orchestrated from, remember, when we started the journey more than a year ago, we started it in Genesis. When we started Genesis chapter 1, when he says in chapter 2, let us create man in our image. Let them subdue the earth. Let them reign and rule. So his pattern has not changed. The only difference is we gave up that mandate. We gave it over. But he sent his son. And his son has got that mandate back for us. And now we need to follow the pattern. We follow the son who followed the pattern. So if we follow the son, then that means we follow the pattern. Because the son is not lawless. The son has kept the pattern so that we have no excuse to not keep his pattern. Amen. So let us continue to read our chapter 1 of Exodus. And so we saw in verse 11 that he said, so they set slave masters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they increased and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. Now, you see, we must understand something. It doesn't matter what the enemy brings against us. It doesn't matter how much the enemy wants to annihilate us. It doesn't matter what our enemies want to bring against us. When we are in the Father's hands, then we must understand that he is the one who is going to fight for us. He's the one who is faithful. Abba is the one who's going to give us favor. So understand, when you are willing to do things the Father's way, if you're willing to stay faithful to the Father and you're willing to be able to stay at Father's feet, it doesn't matter what the enemy wants to bring against you. Father is the one who will fight for you, and you will hold your peace. And that is going to be a beautiful scripture that we are going to see in Exodus chapter 14, when he says, I will fight for you, and you will hold your peace. You will stay in the shalom. And so, even though the enemy is coming against them, no matter where you are, if you are in that place where you are in your wilderness experience, and if the Father is with you, and even if you are in bondage, and even if the enemy is coming against you, you have the Father's favor, and his hand is upon you, and he will continue to help you and deliver you, provided that you are one who is staying faithful to him and to his way. So, we look at, so we continue to read. And the Mitzrites made the children of Israel serve with harshness. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all kinds of work in the field. All their work which they made them do was with harshness. So if we have a look and we go and we read in Genesis chapter 15, this is actually what the Father was already telling Abraham was going to happen. Because here we see the children of Israel, they are seriously in a place of difficulty. They are seriously in a place of hardship that is coming upon them. But if we have a look at Genesis chapter 15, and we look at verses 13, and Genesis 15 verses 13, and this is Abba Yahuwah speaking, and he said to Abraham, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So for 400 years, they are going to be afflicted. But the nation whom they serve, I am going to judge. So understand, Father will use whatever means he has to use. He used them as a people that was to deliver his people out of the time of famine. He used that nation. But you see, they become filled, when the person becomes filled with arrogance and pride and think that they can stand up against the Father's chosen people and what the Father is doing, and these are Father's chosen people. And now this Pharaoh is not the same as the other Pharaoh. He doesn't recognize that these are Abba Yahuwah's children. He doesn't recognize this. So what happens? He's come up against them. And so what is he saying? But the nation whom they serve, I am going to judge, and afterwards let them come out with great possessions. So you see, if we stay faithful to the Father and we continue to do what the Father tells us to do, we will come out on the other side with great possessions. We don't need to worry about what the enemy is going to steal from us, what the enemy is going to take away from us, and all the hardships that we have to go through. And we've got to give up to go up. I mean, there's many of us that have had to give up in order to go up. The problem is that people don't want to give up anything. They want to hold on to everything, but they don't want to give up anything. But we must understand, when we are willing to give up, then we go up. So you see, we want the blessing of the Father, but we don't want to give up anything to receive the blessing of the Father. Now, as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace, and you are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. So you see, after 400 years that they were going to be in bondage and slavery, Father was then going to be able to bring them out. So now they have been afflicted, they have been in bondage, they have been out of their land, they are no longer in their land, and now the Father is wanting to be able to bring them out. So we continue to read. Then the sovereign of Mitzrayim spoke, and then, so we are in Exodus 1 verses 15. Then the sovereign of Mitzrayim spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of the one is Shifra, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you deliver the Hebrew woman and see them on their birth stools, if it is a son, then you shall put him to death, but if it is a daughter, then she shall live. Now, the name of the one midwife is Shifra, and Shifra means fair, fairness. It means brightness. So isn't it interesting? She was willing to be one that was going to be shining bright for the Father, and she was going to be fair. She was going to show fairness. Puah means splendid. It means glitter. It means brilliancy. So again, she's going to have to show the splendidness of the Father. She's going to show the glitter. She's going to show the brilliancy of Abba Yahuwah. Now, isn't it amazing? Now we see that they are being told, these two midwives are being told, when these Israelite women deliver children, kill the boys, kill them, leave the girls, because we don't want them to keep multiplying. But the midwives, listen to verse 17, but the midwives feared Allah and did not do as the sovereign of Mitzrayim commanded them, and kept the male children alive. Now, isn't this amazing? I find this to be so amazing, because these midwives were Egyptian women, yet they feared the Yah of Israel. So even though they have lived in Egypt and they are these Egyptian women, yet at the end of the day, they have a reverence for the Father. So who do we fear? Who do we listen to? What will we bow to? Isn't it amazing how people will bow to an evil system that will go against the Yah-given conscience that is given us? I want you to understand something. Even though people have not maybe given their lives to Yahushua, but no one person on this earth does not have a conscience. We have all been given a Yah-fearing conscience within us. All of us know that there is a creator that is out there, and inside all of us there is a level of where we know what is right from what is wrong, whether we have heard his commands or not heard his commands. Within all of us there is a level of what is right and what is wrong. Yet we have an evil system that is taking place on the earth right now. And how many people that are professing to be children of the Most High are bowing to this evil system? To the extent that this evil system comes up against. So say, for example, you got a people that are raising up and saying, it's good to be able to abort babies. It's good to abort babies that can be up to 9 months and they can abort them. My goodness. Where is the compassion within a person's life? How wicked must the heart become to turn around and say, this baby that's being born is already fully developed. By the time that they are 3 months old, they are already fully developed. And now, this is a baby already. And even from the time that they are formed in their mother's womb, they already are formed in the image of Abba Yahuwah. But people will have no problem in saying, it's okay to do this. People will have no problem in having to be able to say, well, if you don't sign on the dotted line to take a V-thing, an injection, you will be fired from your job. But what does that have to do with anything? You have the right to be able to decide what you want to put in your body, and you are not able to decide. But yet, people will be able to go against their own conscience and knowing what's right from what's wrong, to bow to an evil system. And how sad it is that how many children that call themselves, profess to be children of the Most High, that had no problem in bowing down to an evil system, even when they did find out the truth. Even after they've been given videos and told that this is bad, that this is going to change your DNA, that this is going to do everything to you. And yet at the end of the day, they had no problem whatsoever to bow down to a system. But yet these midwives, who are not Israelites, have learned to see, and they have witnessed that these people are different. They don't serve the god Ra, the god of the Egyptians. They serve the living Yah. And they have seen that these women, they just keep producing. And I'm sure these women must have seen the hardships amongst the Egyptian women that would not be able to bear children. Maybe it doesn't say that the Pharaoh's sister doesn't say that she is married, but could it be because maybe she couldn't bear children? So she could have been one of those that was not able to bear children because father maybe closed their wombs. Because what's interesting is you will find out what he says to these, what he does for them. He opens their wombs like he opened the wombs of the Israelite woman. So maybe they're serving all their gods, bowing down to all their gods in order to bear children. And yet these women, they've seen no gods in their houses, yet they are conceiving. Father is multiplying them. And so we look and we see that there are people that might not know the Father, but yet they are devout people that will not bow even if they don't really know the Father. They know enough about him to not go against him because they fear him. Do you understand? Because they fear him, they will not go against him. And so what they did in the end was they saved Moses' life. They could have saved Moses' life by what they did. So you see, they were being used by the Father in the end, and they risked their lives to save the children of Yahuwah, like many did in the Holocaust. How many people in the Holocaust were willing to hide the Jewish people in their homes and willing to lay down their lives for the Jewish people in order to hide them? And so that there would be a remnant that would survive. And so even though they might not have been Jews, they weren't even part of their culture or knowing anything about them. But there were people, many people, and we've seen movies about the Holocaust where many people were able to go out of their way to help Jewish families in order to hide them, in order to help them. They took their children, they helped their children so that at least from the children there was going to be a remnant that would have survived. And so at the end of the day, Abba still dwells in their hearts. So even though they might not know him, he still dwells in their hearts. They are willing to put their own lives at risk to save others. And so you get many people that do humanitarian work and everything. They're willing to put their lives on the line to save people's lives. And they might not necessarily know the Father. But you see, in their hearts is a willingness to do good. And what does the scripture say? No greater love is there than one to lay down their life for a brother or for a sister. So we see in Exodus chapter 1, verse 20. So if we continue to read, and it says, so the sovereign of Mitzrayim called for the midwives and said to them, why have you done this and kept the male children alive? And the midwives said to the Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Mitzrayim women, for they are lively and give birth before the midwives come to them. So understand, they've even lied over here. They lied to the Pharaoh because they themselves did not put those children to death, and they have lied. But you see, the Father has seen their heart, and they are not willing to bow down to an evil king. They're not willing to bow down to an evil system. They're willing to stand in the face of an evil system. So Yahuwah was good to the midwives, and the people increased and became very numerous. And it came to be, because of the midwives feared Yahuwah, that he provided households for them. So you see, because of what they did, he provided households for them. And who knows that maybe out of those households down the line, maybe those women's children's children, their grandchildren, could have been part of those children that was going to leave Egypt together with the Israelites when they left. Because remember, there were many that came out with them from the nations. And the Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, throw every son who is born into the river and keep alive every daughter. And so the evil decree comes out for every male to now be thrown in the river. And if we have a look, and we will close with the scripture, if we have a look at Matthew chapter 2, the same thing happened to our Messiah in Matthew chapter 2. So in Matthew chapter 2, we just read from verses 4 to 8, and it says, and having gathered all the chief priests and scribes and the people together, he asked them what the Messiah was to be born. So what happens is that the Magi come to Herodias, and he says, and Herodias, and in verse 1, and Yahushua, having been born in Bethlehem of Yehudah in the days of Herodias the sovereign, see, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born sovereign of the Yehudim? For we saw his star in the east, and having come to do reverence to him. And Herodias, the sovereign, having heard, was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. So you see, just like the Pharaoh is now scared of these people, Herodias is scared of this Messiah that's going to be born. And so when the jealousy comes up, when this fear comes up, what is going to happen? They want to annihilate and destroy. And now we have a look and we see that he wants to know where he is born. And so we look at from verse 12, and it says, and having been warned in a dream that they should not return, that these Magi were not to return to Herodias, they departed for their own country by another way. And when they left, see, a messenger of Yahuwah appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Mitzrayim, and remain there until I bring you word. For Herodias is about to seek the child to destroy him. And so he did the same thing. He was killing every child from 2 years and younger, wanting to destroy them, because he wanted to destroy this Messiah that was being born, because he didn't want to be able to, he feared he was going to take over from him. And so therefore he had him killed. And so you see Messiah, the same as Moses, was wanting to be killed, but yet he was spared. How interesting that then Messiah has to go into Egypt, and from Egypt he's going to come out. And so Moses is going to be born in Egypt, and from Egypt he's going to have to come out. And so that's why I said we are going to look at the analyzing all of this. So let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you for your word, my Father. I thank you for this wonderful journey that we have started, Father. And I thank you as we are going to read this book of Exodus. Father, there is a coming out that each one of us needs to come out of where we are still captive and bound. We need to come out, because you are speaking in this hour saying, come out of Babylon, come out from among them. And so there is a great exodus that is taking place now that we need to understand, that we need to exit from. We are in a season, in a time of when there is an open door. The door is opened and you are saying, come up higher, come up higher. Because there are things that I need to show you. So you need to come up higher. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I pray that we will hear the call and that we will answer the call of coming out from wherever it is that we are still bound and captive by the enemy, where we are still slaves to our flesh, slaves to our mindsets, slaves to our minds, to our wills, to our emotions. Now is the hour and now is the time to be set free. And so I praise and I thank you for this, Father, for this wonderful lesson and for this journey and for where we are going to already see that there's going to rise up a deliverer who's wanting to deliver us. And I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for giving us the deliverer of our Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach, the one who's already come to set the captives free. I praise and I thank you for this in Yahushua's name. Amen.